Welcome to Integrated. This is the podcast where we seek to bridge the gap between the intellect and the will so that we can grow as disciples of Christ, surrendering all that we are and all that we have to the truth. Hey guys, thanks for coming on tonight.
Hey.
Hello.
I didn't totally botch it this time, so I'm pretty happy with that. For anyone who knows me knows I'm terrible at the intro stuff, like bad.
Oh,
so is that a new video intro?
I think I've only used it once so far.
So funny thing is, what was it last week, Mark? I set up for us to do a recording because Mark usually does it, and we're sitting there just trying to get through some things. I mean, we're not really recording the episode yet, and all of a sudden, Brick in the chat goes, "Hey, what's up, fellas?"
Oh my God.
And we're like, "Are we live?" And we weren't live. We weren't live, but I remember thinking, did I say anything bad about anybody?
Oh. I don't think you said anything bad about anybody, but I remember I said a bad word that I'm definitely glad did not go live.
Oh, that's funny. How did he know that you were there?
I guess it
showed up in YouTube that Tradmen are going live. And
yeah.
We're like, they are? Okay.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. Yeah, we're still waiting on Anthony, by the way.
So yeah, I made the comment on there. I was like, if I said anything offensive to anybody, I didn't mean it.
Wait, but you weren't live.
No, but
you didn't know that
at the time.
Yes.
But
no,
wouldn't you be able to see YouTube? Like, all you have to do is go to YouTube, and if you see yourself.
Well, that's how we found out. But initially, when we saw Brick commenting, we were like, "Uh-oh."
Oh my gosh, Jason! Who's doing this?
Oh, that one is not me.
Rob.
Okay, so full disclosure, almost everyone in Trad Transmissions has access to this account, and
Except
so
for me, I don't.
This is not. It looks like it's me, but it's not, and I will find out who it is. And
it's Rob.
I will find where you.
For the record, when I did that, I didn't realize it was going to go to your Facebook too.
Oh my goodness! Oh man!
The Sup Fellas was me.
So if there's anything that seems remotely questionable, it is not me. I say that right now.
The Sup Fella was Jason
that was
flirting with
funny.
himself.
I was like,
yes.
What is that? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Hey, Don, does this meet your approval?
Somehow
I know you were disapproving of my Basil Hayden last night.
Oh, I didn't.
Don can't answer with voice, guys, so don't wait for him.
Sorry. I wasn't sure what was. See, and Darren. See, I knew it. I said this before we went live. I said they're gonna think this is an episode of Inebriated with Angela Erickson. The joke that has gone too far. But hey, I like the mugs that you're selling in your shop there over at
Not yet.
Babylon.
It's not open yet.
It's not live yet.
Maybe I hope to get it live tomorrow. So
I'm looking forward to that.
Well, you can get your own little a drinking cup, with a special shout out to me and my show. I guess is a nice way to put it.
Well, if you're in the Telegram, is it Telegram or Telegraph group? Is it Telegram?
Telegram.
Telegraph is a different thing, Jason.
You get special
the Telegraph.
Access. Yeah, you get special access. Nobody's answering.
It would be amazing if
learning Morse code.
That is a good Office episode.
Oh my gosh, you're blinking a lot.
I know y'all are talking about me.
We lost Rob again.
Office. Ugh.
So what have y'all been up to? Are y'all
Streaming.
Are y'all on vacation for the rest of the week? Are y'all still working?
I got tomorrow.
I finished up today, finally.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to.
What's it like to go on vacation, you guys? Just wondering.
It's more like a staycation, but.
Mark was like, anybody that I don't get to today, you're just gonna stay in jail.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was telling Rob I had like a stupid day. So by the time I got in here for the StreamYard, like just getting into the green room, Veronica was just screaming her head off. It's like, oh, sorry, Rob, we're having a rough day.
I didn't hear that at all, actually.
Good. I think my mic wasn't quite plugged in yet.
Did any of you guys read the Synod's first working document?
Mark,
Nope.
I do not have the time to read 54 pages of that dribble.
Oh, goodness. You don't need to read all 54. I mean, you already get kind of the gist of what it sounds like. You can sort of make up something like it in your head. You could say something like, as we approach a new dawn, the importance of learning to journey together, to walk in the light of Christ, and to be church comes ever present with renewed sense of communal understanding and the light of wisdom. Like, you can make up.
That sounds very almost. Yeah, that was.
If I wanted to,
are you the ghostwriter?
It's just hot nonsense.
You know. I joked that Anthony was a Freemason. It may be Mark. He may be the author of the Synod documents.
What was really interesting
as a Tradman just to get in. He's getting in.
He's got
a
lawyer. Actually,
what was really interesting was the Synod on Synodality documents referral to polyamorous marriages. Now, I didn't know that there was such a thing as polyamorous marriages, and in fact, there isn't. And the new marriage bill that the Democrats passed that is basically sort of supposed to protect. What's interesting about that bill is it, even in that warped version of the definition of marriage, limits it to two people, meaning that the Democratic Party now has a closer bead on authentic Catholic moral teaching than the Vatican does. And I don't know what to make of that exactly.
That is
polyamorous marriages.
Yeah, I knew. Anthony says,
Wow.
"Oh boy, Mark
Anthony's
is about to rant."
Anthony, you're supposed to be on video.
Where are you?
On this stream.
Well, I mean, so okay, let's step aside from that because I mean, as much as I love the the depressing Vatican.
Oh, we've said all we
talk
need to say
as
about
much
it.
as,
Yeah, it's
as the next guy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Thanksgiving. Just what we're here for.
I thought we weren't going to deal with that Freemason stuff.
No, it's Friendsgiving.
Friendsgiving. I guess I don't know enough about Thanksgiving.
I can do Friendsgiving.
Know that it's some sort of Freemason holiday. Is it?
Puritan.
No? It's actually Meals with Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
Right. Well, they have their own special day on Black Friday.
You mean Meals with Catholic Indians?
What was that, Angela?
Yikes.
Wow.
All right.
It didn't occur to me until after I said it that might be misconstrued.
Okay. Nobody clip that because she will get all the trolls this time.
Yes,
I will.
All the trolls.
And they'll come back for my forehead, okay? Let's not.
Yeah.
Was that a scalping reference now, too?
Oh, wow.
I have some. Once upon a time, I was told I have
canceled.
some minuscule amount of Cherokee in my blood, so I can't.
So you can't be racist.
I can't.
Are you
Okay,
more
Elizabeth
Indian
Warren.
than
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren?
That's right.
I know. Actually, my sister, my oldest sister, God bless her, she was like many teenagers trying to understand herself and her own identity. So she went through a lot of different interesting phases. One of them being a time in which she embraced this new Catholic heritage that we discovered. I don't even know if it's legit or not, but she spent a lot of time printing things off at school to teach me how to speak Cherokee, even though nobody knew if we were pronouncing anything.
Let's hear it.
No. It's funny though, because I do remember a few of the words that she taught me and how to count to 10 for whatever reason. She would test me.
Well, when you drive through Oklahoma, they have, unless they've taken it down recently, they have a billboard that talks about like the Indian schools and stuff and how they need to relearn their language because I think it like 9%, something, 12% only know their native language, So it sounds like, it's dying across the board, I guess.
I'm sure.
I know how to say Lake Superior in Ojibwe.
Lake Superior?
Yeah. No, it's Gitchagumi.
Well, yeah, you get up north there, and there are so many weird Indian names for like everything.
what makes them
There
weird,
we go with the
Angela?
racism again.
Well, no, like Minnesota is notorious for having unpronounceable names.
What do they call Calhoun now? Like Makasa or something?
Yeah,
It was Algonquin, right? That's what you guys had up there. I don't know.
Ojibwe.
Algonquin are in New
Ojibwe.
York.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Now, Australia is the same way. Like I can't pronounce. I have a hard time with English anyway, but I can't pronounce.
Not you.
half,
You do.
Not you.
I can't pronounce half their towns or cities. I mean, because there's a lot of Aborigine, I guess, named. I don't know. It definitely isn't English.
What does that
Jason,
even mean?
how do they grill? What do they call
Perth is
grilling
easy.
trip?
On the Bobby.
On the Bobby.
You
Who's
did better than
Bobby?
that than normal English.
Why do they keep grilling people on Bobby? That's what I want to know.
Let's see. I want to find the one. Like one of the little towns I stayed in the middle of the desert. It's called Inaminka. That one I can actually say. But they have all kinds of odd names. Dulangari.
Where in the heck is Anthony?
Warren Namubi.
Just a little dingo over there. Oh, did I hear him?
Oh, dingoes.
Oh,
I've seen quite a few dingoes.
peekaboo.
Rob,
Throw me out again.
Oh,
Oh,
Listen,
What's up?
We're all together.
I
Adelaide,
can't stay.
Sydney.
you can't
Why?
stay?
I just got home and I packed the car for this stupid.
Oh, how is
Thanksgiving
your family
trip.
doing? Is everyone getting healthy?
Thank God, nobody's throwing up anymore.
you look
Oh.
cashed, man. Are you okay?
Okay, so last night we got off and my wife was like not sure if she had the stomach thing.
Mhm.
So she was in the room and I'm like, I'm not going near her. So I went to sleep on the couch.
I don't
Go to sleep on the couch, and the freaking cat was on the couch, and now I'm itching like this. Like I had
no.
the worst. I slept an hour and a half last night. Like my eyes were burning. I had to take a shower at 1 a.m. just to like be able to breathe. It was the worst night of my life. Then I get home from work 10 minutes ago. So
Well, what are you doing? What are you doing for Thanksgiving? You having the family
my
over? Or?
family, and me and my brother are leaving right from work, so I have to pack my wife's car today because she's going up in the morning, and I'm going up with my brother right from work. So I feel terrible every time we go to do one of these. I bailed on Connor on election night.
Well, you got to do.
He's
what you
not
gotta do.
salty about
Halloween.
it at all.
Anthony, we're not like you, and we won't guilt trip you for doing
I
familiar
definitely would do
obligations.
that to you guys.
Yeah.
As long as you don't do that to Tradmen, you're okay.
Who needs
It's
alcohol
just
when
me.
we have
It's
you
I'm
people?
I'm the woman in the group, so it's fine.
Mark, did you forget about Halloween?
It's fine. I'm used to men letting me down.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't even tell us, "Hey guys, I can't make it." Me and Mark are sitting in the recording room, like, "Where's Anthony?"
No, there's no way. There's no way that happened. You guys knew I was hospitalized. Get out of here.
I wouldn't say you were hospitalized with a broken finger, but
From 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. I was. So, I mean, I got home and I was out of commission.
yeah, we knew that.
But listen, guys, have a good show tonight. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, even though it's a pagan holiday and Rob's going to tell you guys you shouldn't celebrate it. I am all for Thanksgiving, and I think everybody that has any American blood in them should be celebrating Thanksgiving.
Anthony, God bless you. You take care, buddy.
This is the
Thank
thing.
you,
brother.
It's Friendsgiving.
I'll be in the chat in a little bit, but I got to get this packing done.
For sure.
All right, brother, take it
Yeah,
easy.
you take care. God bless.
So apparently, some Protestant heretics and some Indian heathens got together and had dinner, and apparently that applies to us now. So we're gonna memorialize that.
There was a Catholic Indian there.
Was there really?
Squanto was Catholic.
No. How
Yeah,
did I
dude.
know that?
Catholic, so
Okay, Rob, let's hear it. Let's bring everyone down before we build them back up.
Hang on 1
we
second.
lost Anthony.
Hang on 1 second before Anthony went. The two I was thinking of in Australia are Wagga Wagga and Toowoomba. There's towns called Wagga Wagga and Toowoomba.
Thursday might be Thanksgiving, but who cares? It's also my birthday.
Is it really?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday.
Happy early
Happy birthday on air.
I said it first.
Yeah, but yours didn't make sense because it's not actually his birthday right now.
It doesn't
We heard that.
Actually, today is Tuesday.
matter. Okay.
Well,
okay.
actually,
so Rob,
see,
oh my gosh. Please, boys. Rob, tell us why we shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving.
well, first off, it was put on this day and made official by FDR, who was a 33rd degree Mason. So,
And a terrible president, but continue.
Yeah, but he also brushed his teeth. So does that mean we should stop brushing our teeth?
Yeah, but isn't
Potentially.
it on Thursday,
Yes,
not
definitely.
today? I'm confused.
what?
What are you
Nothing.
confused about? His
Nothing.
birthday or FDR?
I don't. Both, actually.
So, I think Thanksgiving was first made an actual like holiday by Lincoln. We all know about Lincoln, right? So
Terrible.
then it was put on the fourth or third or fourth Thursday in November by FDR.
You see what Brick said?
Here comes
What
the
did he say?
fluoride conspiracy.
You know what? I actually could talk about that.
Did you guys hear about the
I don't
city
use
administrator that without anyone knowing lowered the fluoride in the city's water like year after year after year until it was eventually zero for like 20 years and no one knew?
That's
Where was this?
awesome.
What happened to the people? Anything?
No, he got fired, but other than that,
Fluoride is a neurotoxin. And okay, a quick aside, now that there's an opening. So if you have thyroid disease, it's really bad for your thyroid. And so it's actually very well established in scientific literature that fluoride is horrible for your thyroid and metabolic function. And they actually will admit in scientific literature that if you have thyroid disease, which I have, you should not use fluoride. But like no doctor or dentist will ever tell you that. So you would
never
have
heard
to
it
do your own
before.
research. Yes. Yep. I just stumbled
Interesting.
upon that recently. So just so you know,
Have any of y'all stopped using a microwave?
I rarely use it because
I still use mine.
Well, because I've heard
depending
people,
what I'm doing.
I've heard people talk about it and everything.
See,
and
Lauren knows what's up, by the
and
way.
my wife just came to me last night and
Now you know, Brick.
was talking about maybe we need to look at not using the microwave.
Why?
I don't really know because it's supposed to. I
It's
don't
so
know
bad
enough
for
about
you.
it, but it's supposed to be bad for you. It's supposed to break down your food molecules, and apparently there was a study.
There's no nutrition in your food after you use it.
So I haven't read this study. This was told to me. So I just today. So I haven't really looked it up. But apparently there was a study done where they took water, and they had their control water that wasn't messed with, and then they took water that was put in a microwave and then fed to the plants, and that microwave water could not sustain the life of the plants.
Is that because maybe it was too hot?
Well, I'm sure they let it cool. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I haven't read the study. I'm just saying it was just told to me today by my wife. So I don't know. I haven't looked at it.
Keep in mind though, like 90% of published studies aren't peer reviewed. So,
well, yeah.
All I know is
if you want to use a microwave, just say I'm going to use a microwave. Okay?
No, I don't care. All I know is my grandma told me if I stared in the microwave, I was going to get cancer. And then about the age of 10, I had to tell her, Grandma, it's a Faraday cage. No electromagnetic radiation can escape it. Don't worry.
Supposedly.
Yeah, I'm sure Grandma never brought up anything like that with you ever again.
It's amazing this is turned into
Grandma, it's a Faraday cage. Duh.
Rick, I'm trying. So, okay, Rob says we're not allowed to, or we shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving.
I don't care. I mean,
do you celebrate Thanksgiving? What do you guys do for Thanksgiving?
You mean, do I eat like copious amounts of food?
Yeah. Okay.
I love Thanksgiving.
Like Thursday, we're gonna ever or for Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving, obviously.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Stuffing.
Stuffing.
That's my favorite too.
Especially when you make it not so much as stuffing and it's got like sausage and stuff in it, and I don't know, it's just so
my wife makes a stuffing that is literally my favorite thing to eat.
Do y'all call it stuffing or dressing?
Well, dressing is when it's not in the bird.
So I don't know. We call it both, but I hear dressing a lot. But yeah, no, that's my favorite. I like it when it's even super salty.
Dressing is what it is when you make it outside of a bird.
I don't want to hear none of this nonsense. It's dressing and stuff. Sorry, the bourbon's starting to hit me.
That sounds really good, John, by the way.
Yeah, it does.
Brisket.
Yeah. Yeah, I could do without the turkey or ham. I don't really care for turkey or ham, to be honest. But like all the sides and all the bread and all the pie, I'll eat everything else.
See,
mashed potatoes and gravy, corn, stuffing, green bean casserole. Oh,
I don't like turkey. But I always find like every year I fill up on all the pre-meal stuff, all the snacks and appetizer stuff put out. When it comes time to eat, I'm not really that hungry every single year.
I was just about to ask if you guys have that happen.
But besides dressing or stuffing, whatever you want to call it, the other thing I really like that my grandma makes is she makes an apple salad, and it's so
is it like
good.
Snickers salad?
Like a Waldorf?
I don't know, but either one of those are. But a Snickers salad sounds incredible.
Oh.
That's a Minnesota thing for sure.
Yeah, I guess it is probably Minnesota
salad.
Well,
a Waldorf salad is like an actual salad, with kind of your general salad stuff, but a little sweeter with apples and grapes. A Snickers salad is like whipped cream, Snickers, grapes,
vanilla pudding.
Yes, it's not a salad.
It. I mean,
no,
not a healthy salad.
No, apple salad is no. It's not like a traditional salad. I think it's like, of course, apples. I think it's got some pecans in there. I think it's either mayonnaise or Miracle Whip, something she mixes with it. I don't know. I'd have to ask her. I need to ask her before she passes.
That sounds more like a Waldorf salad to me, actually.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's just very white. The whole thing is white.
Yeah, it's definitely white.
What about Connor? What is your favorite food?
I don't eat Thanksgiving food.
You don't?
I don't really like Thanksgiving.
Why not?
It's just an excuse to see people.
You don't have to.
Are you an introvert?
I like to take my plate and.
Well, it's an excuse. I also can't eat at parties, so I could eat physically. I physically can eat, but I just can't get myself to eat at parties. So if it's at a party, I won't eat. So I don't eat. So I can't do the thing that is literally Thanksgiving.
Do you just not have an appetite at parties? And
you can't. Well, I'd rather talk.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Which again doesn't make sense regarding the it's just an excuse to see people. Maybe I'm an introvert, or maybe I'm just, I don't know. It's not something to celebrate, in my opinion. I mean, other than being thankful, obviously, is something to celebrate, but that's kind of every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree.
If you're not,
I don't know. I seriously think one of the big things our culture is missing is gratitude.
Yes,
just as a concept.
100%.
I see so many people just have no sense of gratitude, and I don't know that Thanksgiving is the thing that's going to communicate that, but
let's do it on Martinmas instead. Then we can do all this on Martinmas instead of today or Thursday.
You're sounding like a Catholic,
not a Freemason.
We have to meet the people where they're at. No, Darren, I agree with Connor that it is kind of an excuse to get together. But I also obviously agree with Mark. There is no gratitude today. That's why you have so many people who are crabby and so many wretched, vitriolic human beings. I mean, I think of a lot of women, especially. I just feel like you see it in the antagonism that they have towards men, right? They think anything that a man does is toxic masculinity unless they're acquiescing to whatever a woman is demanding. And I don't know about you guys,
what is a woman, Angela?
But it has to be the right
woman? An
adult
human biological female.
Let's hear your explanation.
No. Need I show more? Just this. But sorry, now I have all these kids coming in here. This is the evidence of my womanhood, I guess. All the children that are walking in here. But I think a lot of marriages are struggling because you have couples who are not grateful. I think the gratitude piece, that's something I really wanted to talk about more tonight, is this issue of why gratitude is important, and like, yeah, you can relegate it and celebrate it on a day like Thanksgiving, but why aren't we talking about it more as a culture? Because for me, I think gratitude is the thing that has saved my marriage the most. Anytime that I would have been more prone to resentment. Like, I think resentment is kind of the silent killer of relationships, especially marriage. And gratitude is kind of the antidote. Like, that's how you insulate yourself from the influence of the enemy and anywhere in your life, really. What do you guys think about that?
I see most of the people who are making headlines today as people who really ought to take a look at the world around them and how it got to be there, and start thanking some of the people who provide the modern world that we live in, and just, if nothing else, it will stop you from hating everybody all the time. I mean, I don't understand who likes to live like that, but I was actually thinking recently, I was watching a Trent Horn video, and he was talking about answers to so-called pro-choice Catholic politicians. And he's doing this really great defense of, or articulation of it's a human life in the womb, and going through these things. And I just thought, yeah, that's not why they're pro-choice, though. This doesn't hinge on whether or not what they're aborting is a child. They don't care. They want to
These days they don't know.
They believe they have a right to an abortion because it's something I want to do, period. And the right exists without limitation. Not like you don't have rights. I have all the rights. My rights exist without limitation, and the few rights that I afford you are very, very limited. Mm-hmm. That's sociopathy, man. That's I mean, somebody who thinks like that, you can't have a moral argument with, because they literally have no conscience.
You can't build a society with people like that.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, now we can, like, if we were going to talk about the Second Amendment, right? So that protects a right to bear arms. I'm a big believer in that. And we may differ about exactly where that limitation is. But even Wayne LaPierre would not come out and say that the Second Amendment protects his right to own an F-15 Strike Eagle. And because Strike Eagles are expensive, the government must provide me with one, or it's fundamentally unfair and unjust. I mean, he would never make that claim, and no one would ever tolerate.
But it's funny, people do that for trans surgery
and abortion
and all these other things that are an affront to human dignity. Yeah. I
think the question now has to become, is there anything that you believe you do not have a right to? Because the beginning of wisdom, I think, starts there. I would absolutely, if you're not willing to subject yourself to a set of behaviors that you have no moral justification for carrying out, so therefore I will not allow myself to do this, and this. If you don't have such a thing, then there is no moral argument to really be had with you, because you have no conscience.
Well, individualism in a liberal society, and I mean talking about liberalism in the classical sense, has become an idol to people, right? It started out in a lot of ways, if you think about it, with the church, because people, the church taught that people have an inherent dignity about them because they are created in the image of God, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in liberal societies, they have come to a point now where the individual is God, and everything else be damned, because it's become an idol. It's become something they worship, to the point of what you're saying, Mark, that all their needs and desires are at the front of the page. I mean, that's why you have an epidemic in porn. That's why you have, all these abortions and all that, because people say, my individual rights is king, and I worship at that altar.
So here's something that I've been really reflecting on. I was telling Paleocrat this just the other day when I was I listened to my episode with him again just the other day, and I was just weeping.
I was going to say, why? Did you need a good cry that day or something?
No, well, it was interesting. Somebody on Twitter reached out to me and said that they had just listened to it, and she just reminded me of the interview. She really liked the interview, but she said she was up middle of the night weeping, trying to like wash her dishes. She couldn't even see what she was doing. And so I was like, yeah, I should listen to that again, especially because his book is coming out here in Advent. And I'm going to have him on to talk more about that. But this is the thing that I come into this time of year. And to be honest, this time of year is really hard for me. And I think it's hard for a lot of people. The days get shorter and darker. And for me, they're just, as you get older, you reflect on different seasons in your life. And even like the actual seasons of the year sort of bring you back into some of those. It's like when you listen to music, right? Music that you loved as a child, and it sort of brings you back into the same emotional and mental state you were at that time when you really were listening to that a lot. That's why like people love nostalgia. They love listening to the 90s babies love the 90s music, right? And so on and so forth.
It was the best. But
it was the best. 90s music was the best. Hands down. But for me anyway, some of the darkest periods of my life have been like from the late fall going into and through winter going into the spring. And so I always feel like coming around the bend here is like I have to remind myself of gratitude a little bit more. And kind of with that, I've been contemplating more gratitude. Like not gratitude, wonderment. The whole like question of wonderment, like you look at the snow falling and you just sort of wonder, like, as a child, when did I stop looking at the snow falling and the way that it glitters in the evening, when you just sort of look out and it's just like the most beautiful thing you've ever experienced as a human being. Like as a child, you don't even have anything to compare it to. And then you move up to the sky and you're like, wow, look at all these stars. And just you sense that smallness, right? Of like that human smallness being just this tiny little figment in the world. And I was like, when did we lose that? And like, how do we cultivate that again as adults? Like cultivating that sense of wonder for the world around us in the way that God created us, and being grateful for how we were created, and being grateful for being known and loved and created by a God who knows the number of hairs on our head. How do we bring that into the season where we have, we're contemplating his second coming and his birth at the same time, and just having that sense of awe of how absolutely awesome it was to have a choir of angels singing in the heavens the day that our Lord was born, like just wonderful. And the gratitude that we ought to have looking at this. Do you guys ever think about have those moments where you're sort of looking at this world and going, when did I lose that in my soul?
I mean, that's why I moved up here 3 years ago, was because it was harder to feel that and to see that and to experience that, in the middle of an urban area.
Mm-hmm.
So by moving up here,
It's
even
so
on the drive to and from work, I think I've seen wolves 3 or 4 times in the last month, a bear, deer every day. It's just, God's handiwork all around me up here. And that's, I love it.
Yeah, Lauren, I have to say that's one of the best things about parenthood is you get to relive your childhood through your children's eyes, and it sort of renews that in you. I've been thinking about that too, because my son is really obsessed with, he wants to be an astronomer on top of being a police officer and a fireman and a lineman and everything else under the sun, and a wrestler. But the astronomy, I was like obsessed with the stars. And I remember I had this telescope and I would like peer out in the middle of the night in my room with this big telescope. I got this big planetarium for Christmas one year. It was like the coolest thing ever. I was obsessed with this stuff, but because it was so awesome in like the real sense of the word, it was so awe-inspiring. And I love seeing that in my children. It really has helped me a lot to cultivate that again.
Well, I was just Go ahead.
I'll let Jason go.
No, I was just gonna say just a couple things. One kind of going along the same lines that Rob is talking about. Me and Carissa have talked about how when we lived in a smaller town in Wyoming, life was so much slower. I mean, it really is. It's slower.
Oh, yeah.
It's less stressful and all that, and that really gives you an opportunity to sit back and notice your surroundings. Because like here in Houston, you know, you got several million people. It's go, constant traffic, constant people. You know, you've got this schedule and that schedule. And I actually heard a pretty good homily last week at a Novus Ordo parish, people. No, but I've actually heard. But
subjected yourself to a Novus Ordo?
Tradmen?
Well, one, I was out of town, and two, I am not going to miss mass. So anyway, but the priest had a very good homily, and one of the points he said, he was talking about our time that we give people. And that, you know, sometimes we're so busy with our schedules that we'll be at the grocery store line. We'll look at our phone. We got to rush out the door and we got to go. And he's like, you know, people's humanity should take precedent over your schedule. You should take the time, slow down, and get to know the people that are around you the best you can. You know, the person checking your groceries, talk to them or whatever. And I think that kind of leads to more gratitude. And I know for me, a lot of the things you were talking about with gratitude, Angela, me and Mark are going to do basically, I guess if you want to call it a mini Lent during Advent, we're going to do some personal penances and devotions and stuff. And one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm really going to try to increase my prayer life. You know, I'm going to do more daily, just off the cuff prayers, but I'm also going to add back into my life the little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary and stuff like that, because my prayer life has really fallen off the rails. It's nowhere where it should be. And I've noticed when I sit back and think about it, I think a prayer life that is not active really digs into your ability to be grateful for the things around you and God's wonder. Because again, you're separating yourself from God in the sense you're not talking to him every day. You're not sitting and just shutting up and letting God speak to you. And then all of a sudden everything, your world becomes smaller and smaller. And all of a sudden it's just about you. And you forget that. But when I've noticed in the past, when I have a more active prayer life, I'm able to notice the people and the wonders around me that you're talking about. I don't know necessarily what it is that causes that, but as cliche as it may sound, I think an active prayer life will lead to more gratitude.
So what kind of I mean, you talked a little bit about, first of all, praying the little office of Our Lady. Can you teach me how to do that? I want to learn how to pray.
It's a super easy.
Can we do a stream on that sometime? Because I would love to learn how to do that. I feel like I never know what parts, like. And
there's a particular prayer in that office that actually I was just thinking about, perfectly illustrates what Jason's talking about. And every time I pray it, it goes through. It's the canticle it's the canticle of the three children from Daniel 3, where, you know, blessed all you works of the Lord, bless the Lord, praise and exalt him above all forever. And it goes through, bless all ye heavens, bless the Lord, the sun and the moon, bless the Lord, the shower and the dew.
Rick will do one.
So I start thinking about these things that.
Wait, is that a vain repetitive prayer?
Yeah, vain repetitions.
Oh my gosh.
But I think about like the summit of Mount Everest.
Okay, Protestant.
As I'm sitting here praying this prayer, the summit of Mount Everest is, you know, snow is blowing over the tip of the mountain there, and God is there. And God is working. At the center of the black hole, at the center of our galaxy, this massive object that swallows space and time, this thing our mathematics don't even know how to, you know, write descriptions for things like that. And God is there. He's there while I'm praying this prayer. And it really puts it, I mean, for me, it puts it back in, it puts you back into the perspective of your place in the cosmos.
And if you think about it, I know we're talking about Thanksgiving, but what a better time to start trying to have more gratitude than Advent, because I believe the little office also switches over their prayers for the Advent season, because I think there's 3 different seasons. 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 I think there schedules of prayer, right? And I think Advent, I have to look, I'm not certain, but I think it switches over. But either way, I mean, you're looking, Advent is a season of waiting and of looking forward to the birth of Christ, or the coming of Christ. And I mean, more than Thanksgiving, Advent can be a great time of year to really align your gratitude in its proper order.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe every Catholic should have a devotion to some form of the Liturgy of the Hours, and there's a bunch of different approved forms. This is so there's not very many moving parts in this liturgy, actually, and only some of the prayers have.
What book do you have? Because mine's the blue book.
So this is the one put out by Angelus Press. It's in Latin and English, and super easy to follow. They've always got it in stock. I wonder if I can put a.
Do you have you guys? Do any of you have the iMass app at all?
I do.
Oh, once upon a time I did.
Yeah, I think I may
because it has both the Missal and the Divine Office and the Little Office of the Blessed Virgin for every day of the year, ready to go. I mean,
so I think I'm always I'm not sure of, like, you know, when you pray like normal Liturgy of the Hours, you know, some parts you're standing, some parts you're you bow and all that stuff. Like, I just don't know the mechanics of it, basically.
And this spells
like
all
I can
that
read
out.
it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't feel like a lot of the time I don't feel like it tells you exactly at what points you're supposed to bow, or when you're supposed to say the the antiphon that goes, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like sometimes they're not as clear in some of those prayers. So
some of those rubrics, particularly like the standing and the kneeling and stuff, is usually reserved for when you pray the office in choir, like if you were a monk or something like that. If you pray it privately, you typically don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. Yeah. Sit or kneel. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that. And then the other thing I never know, and this is where I would just feel almost, to be honest, like totally stupid. Like, I love that there's so much within traditional Catholicism, like so many traditional hymns and singing of the Psalms and things like that. But I don't know the tune for anything.
I can't carry a tune to save my life. So
you just sing? Or
no,
do you
I
not
just
sing
say
at
it.
all? You just say it?
I just say it.
Because I always am like, I feel so, like, honestly, I feel so stupid trying to do this. And I love to sing, but I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing right now.
But again, don't take what I do, because honestly, I was never taught or watched a video or anything how to do it. I bought the book one time a couple years ago, and I did it for a while. Now, I will say that when I do it during Advent, my intention isn't to do every single hour, because sometimes I shoot too big and I end up getting frustrated and falling down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do 3 prayers throughout the day. I haven't decided if it's going to be 6, 12, and 6, or 9, 12, and
I do
6,
Louds,
or something like that. But yeah,
Vespers, and Compline.
And I didn't know
that plus
I
my rosary, and
that's
a full dance card right there. So.
Yeah, but I think if you're going to do it, if you're like me, you like to swing big, but a lot of times with swinging big, you strike out, you quit.
Story of my life, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to dial it back and say, okay, my goal, one of my goals and devotions through Advent is to get 3 of these prayers a day. And I'm also going to do the St. Andrew's Novena this year. I've never done it before, but I want to do the St. Andrew's Novena.
Cool story about that. I think maybe I shared it in the chat. Or with somebody. So the St. Andrew Novena, my grandma, gosh, must have been 7 years ago now, so my grandpa, I was very close with my grandparents. They helped in a lot of ways, like raise my sisters and I, especially when my parents were going through their divorce. And like during my younger years, we spent a lot of time with my grandparents. Anyway, towards the end of my grandpa's life, he was really struggling, obviously. I think the last time I saw him, maybe one of the last times, we had to call the paramedics because he had a really bad fall in the bathroom and couldn't get back up. So anyway, towards the end of his life, my grandma said to my mom and her siblings that she wanted everyone to pray the St. Andrew Novena, that he would have a happy death. Sorry, got to grab Veronica.
And we take a brief intermission.
I know. Kids are notorious for that. Oh, Mom, this is the worst time. I'm just going to get really loud. So anyway, I'm pretty sure my mom was probably the only one praying it because none of her siblings are practicing Catholics really anymore. But on Christmas Eve, my grandpa died in his sleep. And it was pretty unexpected. Like he wasn't doing great, but he was not like he didn't seem like he was at the end of his life. Thank you.
Hi, Lars.
They say hi. He just got home. He's been working since like, I don't know, it's like 37 this morning. Anyway, but he died in his sleep right on Christmas Eve. And like my grandma, of course, totally attributed it to the novena, which why wouldn't you? It's the end of the novena. But I always found it so amazing because after he passed, I've realized that like I always viewed my grandma as a living saint, and I think in a lot of ways she is. But I wouldn't consider her faith to be highly intellectual. There's a lot of stuff she doesn't know. And she's very easily swayed. You know, she goes to a very boomer parish type thing, you know, like the priest that actually celebrated my sister's funeral was her parish priest. And it was just not my favorite. But it really spoke to me that it doesn't really matter. Like, you can try and understand everything about our faith. And for her, it really was a true act of trust. And she just, you know, it was very simple for her. Like, oh, I've heard this is a great novena. We should pray it. It wasn't like she had this great intellectual backing where she was like, this is why we should do this novena. And here's all the history or anything. Like, here's a novena this time of year. We'll just see, we'll just apply it to this intention. And then my grandpa died and it was very peaceful. And I just think like, oh my goodness, sometimes I wish that my faith was that simple. And I do think that, Mark, you said something earlier about how you basically said that the beginning of wisdom is knowing your limitations. Mm-hmm. You didn't say it that way, but that's basically what you said.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is that when you know your limitations, it's easier for you to be grateful because you see so clearly your own deficits. And then you know that you have to rely on something greater than yourself. And like and you're looking for that, like that acknowledgement everywhere in your life. Like this is where God is meeting me and providing for me in this way, whether spiritually or physically or both. And in any other part of your life too, in your relationships. Like this is my husband. He comes home, he's been working all day and he knows that I'm doing this right now. And his first instinct is to come home and like take the baby, which is pretty amazing because there are a lot of men who would be like, oh, I've been working all day. I'm entitled to my time. And he is like, he totally could have just taken a shower and had his own time. So I'm really grateful that, he's willing to do stuff like that.
I like to say that the Catholic faith is primarily a faith lived, not learned. That does not mean that there aren't things you need to know. And just to a certain extent, as far as the intellectual part of it, you can go as deep into that as you want or don't want. Mm-hmm. But I try never to lose track of the fact that Jesus believed this was a faith that could be understood by children. And so I think it has gotten a little over intellectualized. And one of the things that I always kind of laugh at is when we have these sort of moral debates about the things that are going on in the church today or in the world. The first thing that the opposition will say, well, where's that in the Bible? Where does it say that in the Bible? And I think that has less to do with the authority we ascribe the Bible and more to do with the fact that it's got to be written in a book somewhere in order for it to that's what gives it authority and gives it meaning. When in reality, the Catholic Church's moral teachings are rooted in a very deep understanding about what a human being is and what our rightful place is in the hierarchy of creation. It's not just, sorry, book says no. I mean, these things are in the Bible, and the Bible is authoritative and it is inerrant. But we don't live under the old law. It's not a series of do's and don'ts. You won't find that in the Bible, especially in the New Testament. There's not just a series of you shall not do this, 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 this. And if you do, you incur these punishments. It's not how it works anymore. We live the life of Christ in freedom to do everything that we are free to do within our rightful place in the hierarchy of creation. And so when you approach theology like that, you don't have to get into, why do I have to listen to some 2,000-year-old book? Well, ours is not a religion of books. It really isn't. And I think we can make it that way. And I think
the question is, can you find joy in it?
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
I was just going to say,
the Catholic faith isn't about joy, Jason.
Yeah.
It's about sacrifice.
That's what I've heard.
That's what I was alluding to. Yeah.
So Jason, you approach Advent actually similar to I do, the way that I do. I try to have different penances or things that I fast for and different.
Well, I've never
goals.
done it before. This
You
will
haven't?
actually no. This will be my first Advent actually doing it, because I felt that in a lot of ways, I don't want to say my life was out of control because that sounds bad, but I've lacked in a lot of areas that I need to, and I really need to enact some penances to just build that fortitude and that mental strength to continue the spiritual battle in a positive way, right? And to interact with people in a more positive manner. So it was, like I said, I thought me and Mark had talked about it, and we thought, this might be a good opportunity to go extra for ourselves, but ultimately, hopefully in doing the extra to deny ourselves and to devote ourselves to prayer and to God more. Hopefully that will spread throughout our families and maybe the people around us. But no, this will be my first time. And ironically enough, Advent, of course, I didn't call it Advent till 2018, but it's always been my favorite time of year. I mean, I love this time of year. So
it's the most wonderful time.
So some of the things that I may enact in my penances are going to be some of the things that I've always enjoyed this time of year doing. I haven't got my list down exactly yet, but again, it's all about denying yourself so that you may increase in Christ.
Here's a great Advent reflection that'll foster some gratitude. At least it did in me. I mean, Advent is 4 weeks long, commemorating the 4,000 years that the Jews waited for the Messiah. Go back and read some of those Old Testament Psalms and the wisdom literature and the yearning that they have for, they're giving each other comfort in the time of tribulation that they're in, saying, I know it's hard right now, but one day a champion will come. God will keep his promise to us. We may not live to see that day, but how glorious it will be to live in the Messianic age. And we live in the Messianic age. I mean, you know how many people would have given anything in the world to live during the time of Messiah. And that's something to be grateful for, if nothing else. My goodness.
Yeah.
So I am interested in what you were going to say, Angela. What were you going to say you like to do during Advent?
I mean, I feel like I don't know. I would say this is the first time that I've really taken it seriously in terms of finding things to fast and abstain from. I sort of started with like the mindset a few years ago of I'm going to try and get almost all of my Christmas stuff done prior to Advent so I could focus on praying and it being an actual penitential season instead of it sort of being the season of celebration and gifts. And I always am like, but you guys, it's not even Christmas yet. And then Christmas comes and then you have this whole, this 8-day feast and then like the Christmas season and everyone's like throwing their Christmas trees out by Epiphany, You're like, what's going on here? Why is this all done? I'm not ready to be done yet. Like, I'm just getting started. And so this year I've done most of my shopping beforehand. And then, I'm going to be abstaining from a few things. And I definitely try to overdo it as well. So I'm kind of still discerning up to the last minute, like how much added prayer can I incorporate? Because too, I mean, I always sort of, I have these ideas in my head about what I want to do, but I also like to pretend like I'm not in the state of life that I'm in right now with 5 very small children that never let me sleep. And so in my mind, I'm always like, yeah, I'd love to get up early and I'd love to do all this prayer and all this great stuff. And then, 5:30 rolls around in the morning and I'm slamming the snooze button again and again and again. And so I'm trying to do something different. But what I have kind of like started already as like my ease into it is really just staying off social media as much as I possibly can and really spending more time contemplating. Like one thing I love to do during penitential seasons is to have silence. And so I won't listen to podcasts or music a lot of the time during those seasons, just to have more silence in my life, because then I find myself thinking more about God and speaking to him with my heart instead of being distracted.
Well, silence sounds so easy, like such an easy concept. You just sit there and shut up. But really, if you think about silence, it's very difficult. I was reading Cardinal Sarah's book, The Power of Silence, one time, and I remember he made what I remember. I'm not quoting it verbatim here or anything, but he basically talks about how, even when we're sitting quietly, we're still talking in our head. We're still having
Some
conversations.
There are
with
people
ourselves.
out there who don't. Do you know
That sounds very weird.
That's my husband. He's like that.
I'm like, what do you mean you don't have an internal monologue?
Yes, there are people who don't have an
Constantly.
internal voice. I'm not kidding.
Constantly.
It's the weirdest thing.
So after I read that book, many times when I go to adoration, I will, because he makes the point that you've even got to shut off that internal monologue so that you can hear the voice of God.
Mhm.
God will talk to you if you just shut up. And I'm like, well, I'm sitting here silently, but you've got to be. For me, I struggle up here because if you devote, say, an hour. Well, 10 minutes in, you're like, okay, well, after that, and you're like, oh, no, wait, I'm talking to myself. And then another 10 minutes later, you're thinking of something else. And I found that very difficult. And I don't know that I've successfully done it. But when you talk about silence, we're constantly surrounded by noise. Constantly. There's constant ringing of noise. That's why sometimes it probably feels so good when you just sit in a silent room and no fan going, no noise, nothing. It's just, it feels so odd, but so good. But anyway, I just wanted to make the point that finding silence is actually very difficult. Now, I didn't know there were people that didn't have an internal dialogue.
I know.
But
the weirdest thing.
But for us that do, it's very difficult.
Here's the thing, Angela. He has an internal dialogue, but when y'all come to us like, what are you thinking? We have no idea how to answer that question, so we just say nothing.
No, seriously, yeah. My husband, I'm like,
nothing.
what's going on what's going on in that big brain of yours? And my husband will always be like, nothing.
Yeah.
Unless there's a problem in front of him that he needs to solve, he's just not thinking about anything. And I don't know how people do that. That's just amazing to me. Like a real gift.
Well, that's what makes it so hard for me to like not stay off my phone as much, because I'll sit there and quiet, like, okay, I'm gonna put everything down, I'm just gonna sit here, and all of a sudden I'll think about, well, how do you put together this? Or
me too, googling random things.
Just like things that don't matter. How do they make coffee mugs? And I'll like look it up. Let me look that up real quick. Just stupid stuff that doesn't even matter. You're constantly having in your mind, and then you'll have one stress. You'll be like, okay, figure it out, and your mind is like, we've got to find something else, buddy. We've got to find another stress. So,
what about you, Connor? What's going on in your brain?
Oh my! No one wants to be there. That'd be a scary place for anybody. So many stories go on in that brain. It's insane. One story after another, or hyper focused on whatever stinks at the moment.
Is this one the FBI says?
Noches.
Yeah, he was
Hola,
on our
mi
radar.
Sorry.
It's just like so much hyper focus in my brain. I hate it at a lot of moments. It's quite annoying. I really do need to figure out how to silence my inner voice, but also just constantly telling a story of some sort.
What do you guys do then to cultivate gratitude in your lives? Like how are you actively cultivating it? Apart from prayer, Jason. I know you kind of mentioned that, but like what are you doing practically?
For me, it's a lot thinking about where my life was,
Yeah,
and
me too.
where I've come from and where I am now, and just thinking about everything I have that I didn't, not only that I just didn't have, but I never considered having was possible, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Connor, Mark, Jason.
Well, I don't know. So like,
I've
I
talked
was
a lot.
wanting
Don't
to say-
pretend like there's nothing going on up there, Jason.
No, there is, but I talk way too much.
That's what I feel. I felt like I was dominating the conversation.
Let Connor answer, and then you guys can jump back in.
So I wanted to say something about gratitude, and I think there's two perspectives currently, at least in my generation. And this is kind of the dynamic that makes it hard for people to be grateful. I think there are two perspectives. There's the perspective I hate everything about this world. I want to burn everything to the ground.
Yeah, that kind of nihilism. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that's sort of, and then there's the everything that I would have liked about this world has been destroyed. So I'm just angry that the people before me have ruined so much. There's like that. There's those two perspectives. I think one is sort of the I guess it's sort of the two people thinking. The one person thinks I don't like the world because of the past, and then another world or another viewpoint is I like the past, I hate the present, and the people who destroyed the past, I'm not grateful to them, but I do have a little bit of gratitude for the people that created the past that people then destroyed. So there's still a little bit of gratitude, but it's definitely not a lot.
But in the end, those are the same viewpoints. They're both nihilistic.
Yeah, because I mean, it's sort of the end result is we're just going to hell in a handbasket, right? Like there's no like optimism really, right? Like there's no purpose, and I think you're right. There is sort of this purposelessness, and when you don't have gratitude, you don't find purpose in anything, right? Because there's nothing to like. There's no progress ever being made. Nothing is ever enough, and like for me, naturally, to be honest, I have a very perfectionistic disposition, like and so my internal voice like is horrible. When I talk to myself, I say things I would never say to anybody else because
I'm not the only one.
Yeah, no, I'm horrible. I mean, like objectively, I can look back and be like, what is wrong with you? Why would you say that about yourself? But I spend a lot of my time when I look inward or look at myself, I don't have a lot of gratitude. And so that's why I try really hard to look outward and look for things to be grateful for and like daily remind myself, because otherwise I'm such an awful, bitter human being.
Yeah. Angela,
because I'm never content. Again? I'm choleric, sanguine.
You literally sound exactly like me in so many ways. I'm such a perfectionist. I am highly self-critical of everything that I do. And y'all have witnessed some of that in our group chat. And Mark, more than others, when we first started this podcast that we did, I mean, I'm very highly critical. And again, I don't know that I have any practical thing to give anybody because I'm not good at it. I'm not good at, and I've talked to my wife about it in the past, and she's mentioned, I lack gratitude a lot of ways, and it's a fruit of this perfectionism, self-criticism, and stuff like that in your head about how you never do things good enough. So from there, your outlook is kind of, like you said, bitter and negative towards everything that's happening, and you don't, you don't see the blessings. But
it's because it's a control thing, and it's like we want to pretend like we can do everything.
Yeah.
And you can't really be grateful for other people if you're insisting that you do everything, because you're not giving anyone else room to operate in your orbit. And so then there's nothing to be grateful for. And then it's a double-edged sword, because then you're like, why isn't anyone ever helping me? It's like, well, I don't know, because you're not letting them, because you're a perfectionist and you're psychotic. you know,
and you don't end up making much progress because,
and you're not making much progress
because progress comes from God and not you. I mean,
exactly,
and particularly in the spiritual life,
the humility. Yeah.
And,
I always thought
and
that
again, that was, I was going to say, and again, that was one of the things that I wanted to get control or start to make an effort to get control of through my Advent penances and stuff like that, because it can be very destructive if you let it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I used to feel so bad about myself when I would go to church and, you know, I wasn't in the state of grace because I had committed a mortal sin, and I would be angry with myself for not doing what I needed to do to stay in the state of grace.
Yeah.
So I was talking to my priest about this, and the priest was clear. He's like, you need to put that in, you need to tell God to give you the grace to remain, to conquer sin. You can't do it. If you could, you would have done it by now.
Yes.
You're taking this as a work that you do. And then when you don't measure up, you get mad at yourself because you're not the Messiah you imagined yourself to be. Instead, give it to our Lord. Tell him, Lord, I don't know how to conquer this. I don't know the way out. You sound like my
priest after every confession.
Yeah, you're the only way.
Literally every confession. He's like, Angela, you're not going to be able to do this. Like, none of us can. You've got to ask for help. Like, I know, but I wish I could. I wish I could. But, and that's the thing is, like, I remember after my sister died, everyone would say, like, oh, God never gives you more than you can handle. And I remember being like, no, he like actually does. Like, if I could handle it, I would. Believe me, I would handle it, but I can't. Like, how do you handle your sister dying? It's like, no, I'm pretty sure he gives us more than we can handle. So that we remember that we have to rely on him. And there are things about me that have changed so much since my sister's death. And just, you know, there were a lot of things going on at that time. And of course, you know, my husband and I have been married for almost 10 years. It'll be, we just celebrated 9 years, but you know, there's a lot that happened. There's a lot of things that have changed. I mean, thank God I'm not the same person I was when I was 20. I was an awful human. Like, and I'm still pretty awful, but I was not I was way more awful back then. And yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like, was that you, Rob? That said, like, at the beginning, kind of the way you cultivate gratitude is sort of reflecting back on how far the Lord has brought you, because, you know, sin it happens step by step, right? Like these baby steps where you depart from God's plan for your life. And all of a sudden you look in the mirror one day and you don't recognize yourself and you wonder, how the hell did I get where I'm at right now? Because it wasn't like this one huge event necessarily. For most of us, it was not this big blowout event where we went from being like this good human being to all of a sudden like doing the worst of the worst stuff. I mean, there's a progression that takes place. And so too with holiness, right? And so when you're striving for holiness and you reorient yourself and you dispose yourself to God's grace and goodness, he leads you so gently. And there are so many things that you don't realize are happening along the way until you look back and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't see this part of myself at the time. Like, I knew I was a bad person back then, but I'm seeing this new defect that I have that I didn't know existed because for whatever reason, I was unable to see it. And God is so gentle. He's like, all right, you've seen so much of your deficits, and I'm going to reveal this thing for you. And you can work on this too. But he's not like going to blow it all up in your face at one time. And he leads you gently into holiness and away from sin. So
Anthony's not here. I'm sorry.
Sorry to disappoint.
Sorry, honey. Anthony's not here. Just she says she's not. If you're hiding, why are you here if you're hiding from them?
We also can hear you.
They can hear you, by the way.
You know, a light bulb went off on my head, and it may sound pretty easy for y'all may have figured it out day one. But, you know, I struggle with patience quite a bit as well. and it seems like I'm constantly praying every single day, every single night.
Me too.
Lord, give me more. And then every single day,
He gives you opportunities.
Yeah, he gives you the opportunities, but
no more opportunities.
But I start getting frustrated because I'm like, I fail every single time, and I keep saying, why can't I do this? And maybe that's the point. I can't do this.
That is exact, man.
That's exactly it.
And
I mean, I've never thought about it that way until you were talking about that, and I immediately thought, well, maybe that's why I keep failing.
That line in Genesis after Adam and Eve eat the fruit, and God comes looking for them in the garden, and they run and hide. I feel that. I've felt that. I've absolutely felt that. And
that's why I was away from the church for 10 years.
Yeah.
Here's the thing is I wasn't ever even away from the church necessarily. I was still going to mass every week, but I was living a double life. Like, and when I say double life, I mean, it was almost in the extreme. It wasn't like, I was going to church and then, honey, you need to leave, especially before I talk about this.
Earmuffs. You got to practice the earmuffs.
Go on now. Shut the door, please. No, I mean, hi. Talk about patience. You need to go.
Here's your opportunity.
Lord, no more opportunities. Just give me the patience.
Lord, stop.
So Shelby, you said here, this is actually one of my favorite lines in sacred scripture. But in the Dewey Rheims version, it says, his yoke is easy and that his burden is sweet. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Not light, but sweet. And I always thought that was so interesting because there is kind of a sweetness to embracing like suffering and acknowledging our own deficits, right? It's sort of that kind of like the animal that just sort of like gives up because like there's nothing else you can do, right? Like there's so much going on outside of your control that you're like, I surrender. Like it's that sense of surrender. And there was a time in my life when, Lars and I, my husband and I, we were dating since the time I was 17, right before I turned 18. And we went through a lot together. Like when I was in college, I had a lot of people in my ear telling me things. I'd only dated my husband and then one other guy before then for like all of high school pretty much. And there were a lot of people telling me when I went to college that I should be dating a lot of people and I should be, living the college experience. And at the time I was very much like, no, like that's just not the kind of person that I am. I've never been that person. But the moment that temptation, and I was not strong in my faith and I just hadn't cultivated having a guarded heart. I had sort of let that go by the wayside. And I was like having a completely separate relationship with another person at the same time that I was dating my husband for a long time. And it came to a head, obviously, like it would. And it was actually around this time of year. That's like another one of those, like coming to this time of year just like brings me back to just how awful and how much I hated myself because I knew I was living this double life and partying and doing all this stuff. And my husband, when I finally told him the truth about what was going on, I remember he was so mad at me, obviously, but and he walked away from me for a while. And after he took a few minutes to collect himself, he came back to me and he said, I know that it's going to be so hard to forgive you, but I know that that's what God would want me to do. And so I forgive you for that. And I remember thinking like how can you ever deserve that? Like when you've betrayed somebody's trust in such an awful way. And when you see that on a human level with someone like who's now my husband, and seeing Christ in that person at that time when you are at your most broken and you feel the most vulnerable, you hate yourself, you would understand why this person would hate you more than anybody ever possibly could. Because like I spent the whole car ride to his house like praying that I would just die in a car accident because I didn't want to confront where we were at in our relationship and what I had been doing. and to look at him and see Christ so beautifully in a way that no one had ever witnessed to me. And he was not even, thanks, Enoch. He wasn't even really practicing that much. I mean, he was like a very lukewarm Protestant. And that was the moment that I knew that like this could be salvaged, and that the love of Christ was so much more powerful than I could have ever fathomed. And I have to tell you, he's never once ever thrown that in my face. And that is like the strength to me of like a real man. He has never once brought it up. He's never made me feel bad for being such a broken human being. And those are the things that I remember when I'm cultivating gratitude, right? Like, I remember what an awful, wretched human I'm capable of being because I've been that person, and I've hated myself, and I've hated the way that I've hurt people. And I remember that. And so I'm so much more like less judgmental of other people because I see that in myself. I see that depravity that I'm so inclined to, and how long it took for me to rebuild the walls of my heart to have like those proper dispositions towards other people and in my own relationships and towards my now husband, like, and to really have that mindset to grow in virtue instead of being so inclined to vice. So I have to agree with you, Rob. Like, that's, for me, those are the things that I recall and really help me cultivate a life of gratitude, just because I know my own depravity.
Yeah, that was powerful.
Isn't it interesting, because you made the comment that, about the double life and whatnot on a human level.
I was going to daily mass at that time because I was so broken. Think about that. Like, I was going to daily mass because I wanted Christ so badly, and yet I was so enslaved by the life that I was living.
See,
yeah,
for me, it was. Oh, you can go, Jason.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
I was just gonna say, for me, during my period of life like that, I couldn't show my face. Not at church, not because I didn't want people to see me there, but I couldn't show my face to Christ. Physically, couldn't pray hardly because of the shame and despair I felt.
Yeah, I remember. I think I shared in a recent episode, is at that time in my life, when I was going to daily mass, that a woman I just had come to my end, like emotionally, mentally, on all that, and I was at daily mass, and I remember saying to God when I got to mass, like, who am I to even pray and to like try and talk to you? I'm not worthy of being in your presence at all. I'm just such a disgusting human being, just scum of the earth, the dirt on people's feet. And that was after Holy Communion. A woman approached me from across the church and said, God told me that you should keep praying. He wants you to keep praying to him. And like, somebody I'd never talked to, had no idea who she was. And that was like, gutted me, because I was like, how would you know? Like, how would you know what I was praying when I came in here? It was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy time in my life.
What I was saying is how we all can feel that on a human level and everything, and I think many of us have been in that same boat where you're talking about. We've been in these situations where we haven't always necessarily been honest or faithful, or whatever the case may be, like we are, and we look back and we feel that disgust. I'm always reminded of the book of Hosea, where the prophet Hosea was married to basically a temple prostitute, had 3 kids that he wasn't even sure for his own because of her act, but God was using that to illustrate how God feels when we put things above him, right? Whether it's a false God, whether it's ourselves, or what I talked about earlier, our individualism, God is using that to show how he feels when we are unfaithful to him in our lives. Now, the good thing about the story is at the end, Hosea was reunited with his wife. And if I remember right, from all accounts, everything went on faithfully and happily ever after type story. And that's the beauty in our religion, is that no matter how depraved we may be, God is always there to rekindle that relationship if we have the proper disposition and make the proper, whatever it may need to be, whether you need to maybe actually become a Christian through baptism, through confession, through amendment of life, whatever the case may be, God is always there. And I always found that the book of Hosea very interesting, that he used such a powerful example, because we all know how that feels, or many of us know how that feels, to be either guilty or the victim on a unfaithful relationship. Whether it doesn't have to be like a romantic relationship, it can be a familiar relationship, unfaithfulness. It can be friendships or whatever the case may be. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling here.
Betrayal. No, for sure.
I've always liked the Pharisee and the publican, and I think and I always instinctively want to be the Pharisee. I want to go in and say, Lord, I prayed all of the canonical hours. I did them in Latin. I chanted the whole time. I literally levitated as I pray. Thank goodness I am so good at prayer. And thank goodness that I know how to pray all canonical hours in Latin and
Mark, the levitating might have been that little thing we got in Ohio.
It might have been. Right? And you tell yourself, I'm not going to be like the Pharisee, but there is this desire to show up on Sunday, and you want to show how good you were this week, and how worthy you were. And
that's so interesting. I wonder if that's just a dispositional thing, because I feel like I'm always, I remember especially after I had Elijah, I was like just in such a bad mental state for a long time. I don't think I
never make it
like
to be the Pharisee. When I get upset with myself is because I'm trying to be that that individual. Yeah. And instead, if we would just follow what Christ says, Domini non sum dignus, rentre subtectum meum, sed tantum dicterebat sanabitur anima mea. That's the prayer. That's the one our Lord listens to. And we're all in a position where we could make that prayer. I mean, my goodness, and that's a really powerful testimony there, Angela. And that was humbling for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I would ever say that on this platform, but
I'm sure it took courage to do that.
Well, part of it too is it's like and it's funny, like when we were getting married, when we were engaged, we had a pretty short engagement. It was like 7 months, and I almost called it off because it was like the last minute almost, because I just thought like there's no way that like he's not going to want to be with me for the rest of his life. And
that self-critical, self-doubt, internal monologue.
Yeah. And then it was like, why should he want to be with me for the rest of my life? What if I can't do this? Like, what if I keep, just being stupid and living a selfish life? And I actually sat down and told my stepdad everything that had transpired. Pretty much. And he looked at me and he said, Angela, I think you would really regret it if you called off the wedding. And that was all that he said. And I was like, okay, you're right. Like he would forever be the one that got away kind of thing. And I would regret it for the rest of my life. And thank God, I sort of feel like it was the enemy, like that, sowing those last seeds of doubt just at the last minute, because he knew that this would be the best thing for both my husband and I. Like, I feel so blessed. We have just an amazing marriage. But I don't, not that I wish that we would have learned some of these things the hard way, but it has certainly aided how I view him in my marriage. Like, I just think he's literally the most amazing thing ever, because I've seen just how Christ-like he is. Even when he has faults, he's human, but that the depths of his soul are so incredible. I will forever be grateful that someone could forgive me that way, because I don't know that I would be so quick to forgive somebody else I know I wouldn't be. I've been that person. In like my first relationship, I was that person that was being betrayed regularly, and I was not that ready to forgive. And that was his disposition, was forgiveness. It's just amazing. It's a great model for me.
Well, let me ask you, and I don't know if it's too personal, just you can say so, but do you view, if you look back at your life now, do you view, if you hadn't maybe hit those points in your life, that you would be the faithful Catholic that you are today? Or do you think you would have gone on mediocre, just kind of towing the line?
That's a really good question. I think it would have remained purely intellectual. I think I was always seeking, and I was interested. I mean, I had a lot of very charismatic friends growing up that were from other denominations and stuff. I mean, I taught religious ed in high school very poorly. I should not have been teaching it. But I mean, there was always a desire there. There was always an interest, but I think it definitely became more lived because of those experiences. It became a more visceral experience.
Yeah.
Because of that. Sorry, my husband. Oh, I have stuff blocking the doors to try and keep the kids out. Now Lars is trying to come in so he can get me back. Veronica. And she's smiling.
Well, the reason I ask is,
I think it played a role in it for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was just gonna say, the reason I ask is because it seems like people that, have a more easy life, it seems like it's harder a lot of times, because it almost seems like God uses people at their lows to bring them to him. It's just like, if you think about like combat sports, whether it's boxing, wrestling, whatever the case may be, those that typically have an easier life don't have the work ethic and grind to really be super successful, versus those that have a tougher life. I mean,
it's because you're constantly clawing away from it. Like you know how close you are at any moment to fall into that. Not because it happens suddenly, but because it doesn't happen suddenly. It sneaks up on you when you let your guard down.
And I'm not saying that if you're a middle class American with a comparatively easy life to the rest of the world, that all of a sudden you're a mediocre Catholic or whatnot. I'm just saying, it's like in the scriptures tell us, it's easier, for a rich man or for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter heaven. That's just a reality that we live in, and that's why it's good to practice penances.
Yeah, and that's, I think too, that's a good point. Like, one of the reasons why we do fast and abstain from things is to die to those parts of ourselves that are prone to gluttony and to endless consuming. Sorry, you really like those, don't you? Just attacking me. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And I think that's why it is a lot harder for someone who has so much that is accessible to them. When they have more means, it's harder to be cut off from those things. It's harder to die to those things, as opposed to somebody who is already poor and has already died to a lot of those things.
Yeah.
I think, you guys watch the movie The Scarlet and the Black? You familiar with that one?
Never heard of it.
It's a great film, and it's a true story. Essentially, it takes place in the Vatican in the closing days of World War II, and essentially centers around the tension between trying to keep the Nazis who were in Italy at the time out of the Vatican, because obviously Pope Pius XII is hiding Jews in the Vatican. He wants to obviously maintain the political autonomy of the papal state, and it centers around that. Essentially, there's this Monsignor, and his antagonist is a Third Reich, commander who, he's a Nazi. And I guess I will spoil it for you. At the end of the film,
the Nazis lose.
By the grace of God, and he goes to Spandau prison for, war crimes. And while he's there, he converts to Catholicism, and it's this Monsignor who ends up baptizing him. And I think, man, imagine having to come to grips with the reality that you helped perpetrate the Holocaust. What must that's got to be an interesting conversation with our Lord. I mean,
yeah.
Or like Paul, he's
yeah.
That's why I feel like I identify so much with like Peter and Paul, like the denial and then persecuting, just like constantly. I don't know.
Well, have you guys heard the story of Rudolf Hess?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I was like, yeah,
we're not there yet.
Yeah, you're talking about the commandant of Auschwitz, right?
Right, exactly. He
I know of him. I don't really know much of his story, but
he was in prison awaiting execution for his crimes, of course, and all of his prison guards were Polish, and he saw how these Polish, who he had helped nearly exterminate, still treated every single Nazi prisoner with human dignity. And Rudolf Hess was baptized and raised Catholic, but left that for Nazism. But seeing these Catholic Polish prison guards, it spurred conversion. And the night before he was executed, he asked for a priest to be brought to him, who gave him confession and last rites. And he was executed the last day, and he's probably in heaven, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Well, we can't know for sure, but
point where you've done so much that it just becomes almost a blur kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we get so much hung up on actually the little things, and then you get more hung up. You get more hung up as you do worse things. But then I think there's like a point, I'm guessing, where it's just it's the same kind of thing.
Well, your conscience is deadened, right?
You sear your conscience,
completely.
Well, but aren't we talking about the person that when they come back, like if they ever come back, then we're talking about how guilty they feel about what they've done.
Yeah.
So like, obviously we wouldn't. A person who doesn't come back wouldn't be in the same way feeling that guilt because of a dead conscience. But somebody like these the Nazis that converted before their death and stuff like that. I'm guessing it. There's. In other words, I don't think it just continues to like the. I don't know, like double. I don't think it doubles. I think at some point, like you've committed so much atrocity that you can get more.
I mean, I've never assisted in the slaughter of 11 million people, but I can tell you.
Thank God.
That was my big reveal, guys. I've never done that.
This is a night of confessions.
But when
Rob wasn't. Remember.
When I do think about my past, I mean, you're at the time it's a blur. You're absolutely right about that. But now I guess when I'm feeling really scrupulous, every little thing that I did comes back. Every single one.
Oh man, yeah. I spent
even things I haven't thought about for years.
Yes. I spent years. Anytime I would see a certain type of car, it would throw me back. Like anxiety, borderline panic attacks, guilt. Like, yeah. I mean, it took a long time before and because too, the enemy knows those doors, and so he exploits them. Yeah. And so you are continually attacked. It took me a long time, and I still occasionally I feel those things, and I like just totally surrendering that to God and being like constantly returning to him and saying like, Lord, I give this to you. I give this to you because I can't do this. I have to give it to you. I don't want this burden anymore.
That's why sin is never one and done, right?
Never.
No. And talking about the conscience, it's a weird thing, right? Because I think the majority of people maybe live in evil lives, maybe those live in sinful lives, or even in degeneracy. I think at the end of the day, the majority of them have guilty consciences, even from a natural reasoning perspective, right? Religion aside. I think they have guilty conscience, but the conscience is such a weird thing, right? If it's not properly ordered or it's not properly controlled, that guilt can drive you into further sin, further degeneracy, or it can drive you back into the arms of, in some of our cases, back in the arms of the church or back in the ways of God or whatever the case may be. I don't know, when you think about it, the way the conscience works, it can go either way, and either way can be an extreme.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for me, it was like a house of cards, right? You kind of build that first layer slowly, and it's pretty solid, and it goes higher and higher, and eventually, when that former life all came crashing down, it was a relief, you know, that it was. Oh, I mean, I'll never forget it, but it was over. It was over, and you could start to build something more solid finally. If that makes any sense.
It does.
No, it does.
It does. Yeah, I gosh, your 20s are such a, especially
I'm
nowadays,
so glad that my 20s are over.
Yeah, because man, talk about
Well, you only get one chance at life, right? And almost every experience in your life is learning on the curve, right? I mean, it's just like we were talking to one of our kids last night about how with your kids, you get one chance. It's not like you got a trial run, you figured everything out. And I don't know about y'all, but as a parent, I sit in bed many nights wondering, oh, I should have done this or I shouldn't have done that. Was I too harsh? Should I have not said this or that? And it's like, you're never going to really know. I mean, what's the answer? Sometimes they're obvious. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have yelled and gotten so mad. But there's also a lot of areas where it's like, I don't know if I did the right thing or not.
Yeah, I feel like my priest, after every confession, I mean, there's obviously a big bulk of my confession has to do with motherhood, most of it. And he's always like, Angela, you're kind of too hard on yourself because, you're human. There's only so much you can handle. And I don't know. I'm always like, Father, you're too nice. I need a harsher priest. I need a harsher penance. I need, all these things. I'm like, you're too nice.
But it's your kids.
Exactly.
And if you screw up too much,
I say to him, I'm like, I'm gonna ruin my children.
Like,
I'm gonna ruin the oldest for sure.
Like maybe it's me. Maybe it's my my tendency to be scrupulous. But a lot of times, like, it's like if I screw up too much, I'm gonna screw up my kids. Yeah. And that's one of the scariest things I think about is having a kid that is off the rails because you did or didn't do something.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any opinions on dreams? I know that's kind of off topic.
No, I don't have them.
You don't have dreams?
That's weird.
I seriously can maybe remember half a dozen dreams I've ever had my whole life.
Really?
I have them all.
I mean, clearly I know physiologically and neurologically that I'm, I have
Yeah.
dreams. It's just part of being human.
You don't remember?
I just don't remember them.
I have dreams so much that I could be a mystic if I knew how to interpret them.
Me
Jeez.
too.
So I have
No, I'm joking.
I have had some pretty interesting dreams throughout my life. So some of them, like I had one as a child that I remember that was very apocalyptic. And in a way that it didn't make sense at that age because I didn't know enough about scripture or anything for it to make sense. I didn't make sense of it until I was much older. So insofar as dreams, I think you have to be very discerning.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of my dreams are just random gibberish, but I do
not from you, Jason.
No, but I remember a dream I had, and I can still vividly remember it today. Before I was married, when I wasn't living like I should, right? I was in pretty bad sin. And I remember I went to sleep and I woke up like completely terrified. And basically the gist of the dream is if you don't change your life, you're going to end up here. And I remember waking up like, and it was like I felt the fires that I saw in this dream. I felt like it was real to me, like nothing has ever been real to me in a dream before. And I woke up terrified. I woke up feeling like I felt that heat. and I woke up and said, okay, well, things are going to be different. And for a short period, they were different, but you lapse like so many times, lapse back in. But I think you ask about dreams. I think sometimes they're just like Angela's saying, you got to discern. Sometimes they're just random goobly gaw, but I think sometimes they can send maybe real messages. I don't know. And a lot of times you can't discern those, but sometimes you can.
Why do you ask, Connor?
I had a dream a couple weeks ago. It was a pretty traumatic dream, but basically it caused me to wake up and conscious. Like I wasn't like, so sometimes you wake up from a dream and you're still like half asleep, but I was fully awake and it made me just scream like out loud, like for a little bit. And like it felt like the eternity that I would assume hell was like. So it was just an interesting.
I'd be careful assuming that.
Well, because it's just because I was, just that. I'm just saying it was like the whole concept was that like, in my mind, it felt like something had become eternal, and it was an eternal pain. So that's just what my mind went to.
Was it something like when you woke up, like you could, feel that pain in a sense, or was it just the intellectual aspect?
I don't know. I just felt
like
I
infused knowledge, kind of.
What
was it? Did it almost feel like infused knowledge?
I don't know what that.
In a sense, like there was a just this deep understanding that just sort of came with it, like it was infused into what you were experiencing, that this is what it was.
Not necessarily. It felt more like, because I was so I went like back to sleep a little bit after, and it took waking up again to put the pieces together of just what I was thinking at that time. But it was quite. I know I was fully awake when I woke up, kind of thing. Because there are sometimes when I have a dream that's a terrifying dream where I'm still half asleep.
Right.
But then so I'm not like thinking clearly, but I was thinking clearly, and it just I've never had it cause me
to that
like
vivid, to
like scream out. Also, is sleep apnea when you can't sleep?
No, it's when you don't breathe. You stop breathing while you're sleeping.
No, I don't have sleep apnea.
I do, and I sent my machine back because they kept charging me too much.
I had one dream once that I was sure meant something, but I've thought about it for years, and I think it was just nothing. It was I was at Wrigley Field. It's empty, and there is a man in an astronaut suit walking up the stands or whatever, and it's just me and this astronaut there in the friendly confines. He raises up the little astronaut helmet thing, and it's His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI. This was 2012. And he hands me a hot dog. He hands me a hot dog, and he says in this German accent, "Time for blastoff." and I don't know.
So what happened?
You was that around and it's a Nazi base.
He resigned and Francis took over. So I'm not sure that.
Maybe that's what he meant. It's time for him to take off.
What he meant was he needed Mark to step up to the plate and be the next pope, but Mark didn't, and now
it's all your fault.
I do. I exercise my ministry on Tradmen. So
there you go.
That's why you excommunicate people.
That's why he has
excommunicate people and infallibly declare my own magisteriums.
It's more than what never mind.
By the way, I did. Okay, so this is a good story to talk about. We're sharing weaknesses and moments of weakness. I am going to stop picking on the hierarchy. I got to, because I had an experience recently that reminded me that all these things that I get mad at them for not doing, Just stand up for the truths of the Catholic Church, and who cares how many people you upset or you offend? Come on, be a man. And I had an opportunity where a friend of mine she told me that she was going to propose to her girlfriend. And in that moment, all I could think of is, okay, if I tell her what I'm thinking, I'm going to lose the friend forever, because that's how it works now. There is no, well, that's okay, Mark, I can respect that. I disagree with you, but okay, fair enough. There's none of that. I'm just going to lose my friend forever. And I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a way I can say it, but not say it. So I start getting, I'm going to get really creative. And I just ended up saying nothing. I still feel like my courage failed. I did not. Okay. Yeah. So I didn't congratulate her or tell her that's good or okay or anything, but I certainly didn't stand up for the truth or offer advice that I think would have been, maybe I didn't know how to do it or whatever. And I thought, I don't know how to do this in a way that's not going to screw this up. But I go back to something my grandmother used to tell me: you can't convert people. Only God can do that. And the best thing that you can do is stay the heck out of his way. It might feel really great to try and, if somebody asks you about the truths of the Catholic faith, to put your spin on it so that you'll say it, but you won't say it. And look how slick I am. And man, you have no right to do that. You have no right to deny.
Do you think she'll send you an invitation?
Probably not. I don't know.
No.
I don't know.
I'm just thinking, you refusing to go may be opportunity or sign as well that she brings up. I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't know your extent of your relationship,
but it in that moment I was like, okay, Mark, maybe this thing you're demanding that Francis and all these cardinals do all that, maybe it's not as easy as because this is just a situation of one person, an acquaintance I had from law school. The press isn't even going to find out about this, What would you do if, would you really be,
because we can.
Are you, I don't know.
We'll get the Scranton Times to come interview.
It takes courage and to believe that you're this, pinnacle of virtue all the time. And why can't they be more like you? That's vanity. And I've been guilty of that. And I'm going to do my best to make a firm purpose of amendment to really check that behavior, because
to be fair, and I do think you're absolutely right about slowing down on the, criticizing the hierarchy, but it is literally their jobs to call people away from sin.
Who was good at it? Who was good at standing up for the truth in a way that was like, what a lovely thing to say. John Paul II. I read that guy's stuff and I thought, I was reading Familiaris Consortio recently, and I thought, man, we really need a rediscovery of some of that guy's spirituality, because he was speaking directly to issues that, are hot button issues today that are all, up in the air and up for grabs and everything. But he does it in a way that I don't know, rather than, look, I'm sorry, but there's no gay marriage. He says it in a way that gets you excited about the sacrament of matrimony and how beautiful it is and the great gift that God has given human beings. I mean, think about this. When a man and a woman participate in the conjugal act illicitly within the valid confines of matrimony, they are participating in the creation of an eternal being made in the image and likeness of God himself. The angels don't even get to do that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I was just thinking about that along those lines just the other day. Like, why did God create man in an incarnate way and not the angels?
Yeah.
Why? Can anyone explain to me why he created us as incarnate
Well,
beings?
I can,
just
but
so that Christ could come and redeem us?
The theology of the body, man. Go back and read it. It's powerful. It's powerful. And
I don't know. Some trads say that the theology of the body.
I
is
don't.
bad.
Well,
I don't know that they understand it, because
this Tradmen podcast has plans in the future to do an episode or episodes on theology of the body.
the body is a theological reality. It is the way it is. It is the way by which God reveals the most intimate things about himself.
Yeah.
When he's creating,
I agree. By
everything
the way,
else
I
in
agree. That's
creation,
part of
yeah.
why this is integrated.
He just says, let there be light, let there be animals, let there be trees. But when he gets to us, all of a sudden, we're now privy for the first time ever to an internal dialogue amongst the Holy Trinity. Let us make man in our image and likeness. And then it says, and so he made man in his image and likeness, male and female, he created them. That's the first time that gender is used to describe one of God's creations.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so integral to who you are. You literally can't be a person without it.
Right.
And I just think
it's down to your DNA, down to your bone structure, everything.
And it is such a
even your arm structure.
Yeah, it's such a horrible thing to. And when you think of that like that, think of what a horrible thing it is to tell a young person, yeah, God didn't even love you enough to put you in the right body.
Yeah.
He loved everybody else to put them in the right body, but you, what a horrible thing to tell a person. And instead of that, look at the theology of the church with regards to Jesus's body himself. I remember thinking when I was a kid and going through First Communion, and they would tell me, yeah, it really becomes the body of Christ. I remember thinking it's Christ's dead body. Because I was a kid, but it's the language. If I walk into a library and say, yep, I found the body, what does that mean? I found a dead body, right? But the truth is that there is no fuller presence of Christ than he is present in his body. And when the church presents us with the fullness of Christ every Sunday, it doesn't say, behold the Spirit of the Lord who is in here somewhere. It says the body of Christ. That's the fullness of himself. So the body is a theological reality that needs to be dealt with, because the world has a theology of the body and it sucks. I'll tell you that right now. This is just a vessel or some kind of a vehicle I'm in, and the real me is in here somewhere. No. This is who you are in his resurrected body, in the fullness of his presence. I mean, it's so powerful. God is more present. Mm-hmm. Jesus is more present in the Eucharist than you and I are in our own bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people don't understand that we are ensouled bodies and we are embodied souls.
Yeah.
And I love that he created us in a way in which we get to not only intellectually understand, or at least do our best to understand who he is and to come to know him on that level, but we get to see him, we get to taste him, we get to touch him, we get to smell him, we get to hear him through the priest. And even some amazing saints have actually heard his voice, and I think that's such an amazing thing about being human. Again, talking about gratitude. Like, how great is it that we were created this way? How great is it that we were created in a way in which we are imperfect and we rely on one another to help us on our journey to heaven, to help us draw near to our Lord, to lean on each other when we are experiencing a deficit in some area. Like, that's one thing too about our human nature. It's like, we're all broken and imperfect, and we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And it is in that body in which we get to rely on other people's strengths, like especially our spouses. They get to make up in the areas in which we are lacking, right? You see that in I feel the same way about my husband. It's like you get to be a part of, again, but too, even within the marriage, it's like you have this marriage in and of itself replicates the Trinity and the body of Christ. And it is your domestic ecclesia. And so you just see that in a microcosm within your family, and then you get to build that out as you look at the whole church, this universal church that is seeking heaven.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're made for.
That's why I always like to. I heard one time, I don't remember where it was, but they talked marriage is a Trinitarian type love, and I've always liked that because it's, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's like I can't think of the word, but it's like the the love between the three persons in the Blessed Trinity.
One of the things I'm not a fan of is when we defend the church's teaching on marriage in this way. We say, because sex is for procreation only. I mean, that's true, but man, what a cold clinical way to describe what it is that we get to participate in. I mean, we're not just, our children are not offspring, right? We're not just propagating the species. That's a person. There's only three people. There's only three types of persons. Only two of them are creatures. And one of those doesn't get to procreate. They can't, angels can't make new angels as far as I know, but we get to participate in the creation of something that is wholly other than the rest of the animals and that roam this earth. So I get it. It is for procreation only, but it needs to be explained in a way that really represents the full theological reality of what's going on here and why it's so important.
Let me ask y'all a question real quick. I was just going to ask, have y'all heard the term that God, people talk about God is always creating because that's who he is. And have y'all heard that before, that term, or not?
I haven't, but
I mean, not specifically, but I would assume it comes from him literally being existence. So.
Yeah. That's
him being creative by nature.
Yeah, that's where it comes from. I was just gonna see what y'all thought about that, and then two, having this discussion makes me think that if God is always creating, then we can see that through the birth of children on our, in our world, we're constantly seeing creative process, and it's just another way to think about how we are partaking in, like Mark said, in God's creation. He's allowing us to participate in that, and it's amazing. And then it makes you, if you really think about it on a deeper level, it really makes you think about your responsibility towards your children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think especially as a woman too, like coming back to Advent, some of the most powerful experiences that I've had as a mother is being pregnant during Advent and contemplating Our Lady, praying the rosary and like reading the scriptures with each mystery, not just saying what mystery it is, but actually going back and truly spending extra time to meditate on those scriptures and how absolutely incredible those moments are, punctuated by the angelic, especially in the joyful mysteries, and how incredible it must be to have had God in his fullness in a microscopic manner living within her womb. And how absolutely incredible it is that God entrusted himself in such a vulnerable way to a woman. And it just is crazy to me that people insist that the Catholic Church is somehow misogynistic or doesn't trust women or doesn't believe that women should have like a role in the church in any meaningful way. It's like, are you kidding? God gave himself over to be within. He entrusted himself to the security of a woman's womb. Are you kidding?
And the ironic thing is, they will say that we're misogynistic, and then in the same breath say we worship a woman.
I know. Yes. Well, and it's like, I just can't imagine anything more powerful. Like, I look at my children, especially like those. Like the birth of every child is absolutely incredible. And, some people have really traumatic experiences. So I'm not saying that, in any way, every woman's experience is different. But I just think you look at these human beings, you feel them moving within you. And I've always wondered, like, what was it like to be pregnant with our Lord? Because I know what it feels like to have a baby moving within me. It's like, what would that be like to know that you have God moving within you?
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, and then the fear that I've had, like, and I think about Mary and her perfect virtue. It's like, I think about the times that I've been harsh to my children, or maybe times when I haven't known where my children were. And I think about Our Lady and her perfect love towards her son, and that perfect understanding, but also perfect entrustment. It's like, how would she have done this? I have a hard time relating to that, to be honest, because it's just so otherworldly. It's so different from my human and fallen experience of motherhood, and still just so incredible to contemplate. Like, what would that have been like? What would it have been like to be Our Lady? Because I know how frantic I've been when I've lost a child, or have been harsh, or how did she instruct him, knowing that this was God? And how many times have I looked at my children and tried to remind myself, like, they're not really my children, but they've been entrusted to me.
Yeah. That's one thing I think our society needs to get reoriented on, is we've been given dominion over the earth. We've not been given sovereignty over it. And I think we treat other people, as well as, animals and things, like they are our sovereign property, that we can just do any darn thing we feel. It's mine.
Well, yeah.
No. There's always this thing about naming people, and naming in the Bible is a symbol of dominion, right? So, Adam gets to name all the animals in the field and all the fish that swim in the sea. But who names Adam? Does he choose his own name? I declare myself to be Adam. No, God names him Adam. And there are things that God creates that God names. And so we don't have complete sovereignty over everything and everybody. We can't just define everything for ourselves.
Well, and people always ask, why is IVF and surrogacy and all that evil? Well, I mean, it's evil on a few different levels, but one goes back to what you said there at the end of your statement, Angela, about, these are not my children. God has entrusted them to me.
Yes.
And what is surrogacy and IVF and stuff like that, and even contraception in general, what does it do? It says, I am the God who gets to choose when I have children, when I don't have children. And basically children become commodities. Women, and I know y'all have mentioned it before in your shows as well, but like surrogacy and stuff, women just become a commodity. They they truly become a vessel that these people use and discard once they're done. I mean, we saw that disgusting video of those two gay men just like just degrading a woman's body.
Oh my goodness.
As she was as she was a surrogate for these two gay men. And it's just like,
but that's the thing,
that is why it's so evil, because you're playing God, and I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to keep rambling here, but
no, I just think all of that stuff, and this, I guess, maybe is a podcast for another time, but at the end of the day, it's all a caricature of human nature, right? Like, even transgender men, they never look like real women. It's a caricature of femininity, right? Like,
they have no experience of femininity.
They have no experience. They don't know what it's like to be a woman. Right. They think they know what it looks like, so they paint their nails, they do their hair real nice, they put on a lot of makeup.
They always act like a ditz. Have you ever noticed that?
They never. I've never seen a transgender man who looks like me, or looks and talks like I do.
Well, here's the thing: is they'll say, "Well, women don't need to have all these fit in this box. Women don't just wear makeup. Women don't wear heels."
Put themselves in that box.
But then on the flip side, these transgender men will do all the stereotypes of what a woman will dress like, look like, or act like, and it's like you can't have it both ways, man.
Yeah, and I think too, even with surrogacy, you see that it's that cheapness that comes with buying a woman's womb, right? Like, it's a caricature because it lacks it. Every one of those children that are created, by the way, in those instances, I mean, they're still human beings. They still have inherent dignity. They still are made in the image and likeness of God.
Of course.
But they have been robbed of those natural relationships. I mean, I can't imagine, and I feel like we're totally way off the rails here, but I just can't imagine what it would be like to be separated as a child, as a newborn, from the only person you've ever known.
You're not supposed to be.
You're not supposed to be. I mean, I get there are instances of adoption where it's necessary, but you are literally paying to do this to another human being, to inflict this much trauma. It's awful.
Well, the exception should not be the norm in those cases of adoption and stuff like that.
Right.
And but that doesn't. But even in those cases, it doesn't mean that it's not a traumatic experience for that newborn.
For sure.
It still is.
sure.
And the fact that you're willingly doing that in surrogacy is just evil. I mean,
but I think too, like all of this is symptomatic of a culture that lacks gratitude, right? Like it's again, gratitude is kind of when you lack gratitude, you want to control everything and you get mad when things aren't going the way that you want them to go, right? So like a lot of this is you're lacking gratitude in some way, you desire control in some way, and so you're going to assert control any way that you can, or at least try to, no matter what the cost and no matter how that impacts anyone else. So yeah, let's bring it back to that question of gratitude, preparing for Advent. And do any of you have any final thoughts on this season, as we prepare for Thanksgiving, but really Advent and preparing for that?
Did you one of the most mysterious things in the Bible to me has been when Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man. As I know that's an apocalyptic thing, but I didn't really know much about it. So I decided to start reading about what does that mean and why does he call himself that? And he refers to himself like that primarily in Ezekiel. And then I think a couple of times he doesn't do that. The Bible refers to the Son of Man in Ezekiel and in Daniel as an apocalyptic messianic reference, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, but why does he call him that word? And it's because when they refer to the other kingdoms in the ancient Near East, they refer to them as other types of animals, beasts, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! But when it refers to the kingdom of Israel, it refers to the kingdom of Israel as one who is like a son of man. And it's again another reference to the human, to Christ's human body. And you got to understand what a weird thing that is in the ancient Near East, because all of their gods that they worshiped in these other places were like a hybrid of like the head of an eagle and the body of a lion and things like that. And here are these Israelites who claim that God made his own image and likeness, and it's us. Mind blown. Theology of the body. Don't miss it. It's better than you've heard.
Rob, but you're waiting for an actually. I can see it.
No, I just of all the things I want to read and learn about theology, that one might wait until I'm 80 or so.
Oh, you're missing out.
It's a pretty big book. That one is pretty big. Well, do any of you guys have anything coming up on your channels here? I feel like we should probably close this thing out. We're going. Thanks for those of you guys who have stuck with us for the last 2 hours. It's pretty amazing.
Hey, I've had a great time though. I appreciate you putting this together.
Great. No,
and I hope I didn't dominate the conversation.
Same here.
I think Connor talked a little bit too much, but
yeah, Connor, seriously, man.
Connor, what do you have coming up on your podcast Plotlines?
Nothing specific exactly, or nothing planned. There'll be a lot of return guests. Joseph Pierce, Bond Radio. Trying to think. Probably Bergsman will probably be back on soon. I'm not sure how soon. There's just a lot of emails I have to write. But yeah, just a lot of returners and some new people. I think I'll be having Anthony Esselin on at some point. So
awesome.
Stuff like that. No specific dates.
Okay. What about you guys, Jason and Mark? What do you have coming up here on Tradmen?
We're gonna try and interview.
Mark go first. Yeah,
we're gonna try and interview Sister Maria Yosef again. We were having internet issues last time that just made a meaningful conversation. It just wasn't possible, so we rescheduled for tomorrow. We're gonna try it again, and hopefully we will have a wonderful episode that every young Catholic girl should listen to, because it's going to be all about the discernment of not just religious life, but discernment of your vocation in general. And how does a young person go about doing that? We are going to focus primarily on women religious and that role in the church and how that works. But it's going to be, hopefully, if the internet and everything works out in our favor, it should be a really good episode.
And that convent has about the best Advent album out there.
Oh yeah.
You could go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say they were started under the auspices of the FSSP. They're now on they have their own, religious community that is independent of that, but they are a traditional Latin Mass community. So.
Yeah, and I will say the little bit of time we were able to talk to Sister Mary before we were having internet issues, you could seriously feel the holiness out of this lady.
I love. I pray that one of my children are religious.
Yep, and it's something that I tell my girls and I tell my boys too, but my girls are 14 and 12. And I've said this before. I use Mark's grandmother's saying now to my kids all the time. I'm like, look, after high school, you don't have to rush off to college or get a job or whatever. Give God first choice. At least discern for a year. Find a group and discern for a year. And then after that, if you're like, you have 3 choices. No, this isn't for me. Yes, this is for me, or I'm not sure yet. And then you still have another year or 2 before you have to make, commitments.
Right.
But yeah, no, I'm excited about that episode. I do want to add that I will, thanks to Rob, he actually got me in contact with another podcaster over at Quest for Faith, I believe it is, Quest for Truth or Quest for Faith. And he actually wants to do an episode with me first on his podcast about our conversion, because we come from the same faith group. So we wanted to talk about like the scriptures and our life and stuff like that led us to the Catholic Church. And depending on where that episode ends, he may want to, or we may have him come over on our episode. So I'm going to do that. And I'm also going to mirror that discussion on our podcast channel as well. And I'm hoping at early 2023 that we will be able to put out 2 episodes on the different rites within the church, hopefully the Syriac and maybe even the Armenian Catholic churches. So I've been in discussions with some people about that. So hopefully we'll be able to get that out early 2023.
That's awesome. What about you, Rob? What do you and Anthony have going on?
Well, last night we had our interview with Enoch, where he interviewed us and got really rather personal. But it was super fun and hilarious. And
Thanks, so.
Anthony's Anthony. And yeah, my wife gave up all the beans. So but on November 30th, we're having Eric Sammons on to talk about Advent and his book on the Jesse tree. Sometime early in December, we're having 2 trivia episodes where it's Cradle Catholics versus converts from Protestantism on Bible trivia. So that should be fun. And yeah, we're doing that just because Catholic versus Protestant apparently is a great term to have in your title for searches.
The truth comes out.
Well, yeah. if me and Hope team up, we're gonna sweep the floor with everybody.
We'll see. We're getting some pretty big name Cradle Catholics in on it. So
I really have no high ambitions of winning, to be quite honest.
But and then December 16th, we are having Dr. Paul Thingpin on to talk about his new book, The Life of Saint Joseph as Seen Through the Mystics.
That's interesting.
That's super exciting. I love it. You guys have awesome stuff coming up. I have a lot of stuff to listen to. And sadly, I keep telling myself that I'm not going to have like very much going on in my podcast, but I'm realizing that I am doing a live stream with Darren. He would be upset if I didn't share that. We haven't decided a date yet, but we will be cross-stitching again. So if you're going to be in the thick of like Advent craziness and you want to kick back with us, again, a lot of people liked that episode that we did earlier.
It was fun.
It's great. It's the best thing.
So make sure you stay tuned for when I let you know the exact date and time that we're going to do that together. And then I'm hopefully going to reschedule an interview with Dr. Brukowski on his book, The Two Patients, where he talks about his conversion from being an abortionist to a pro-life doctor now who runs a pro-life pregnancy center. And then I think Haley and I will continue doing the ascent over on The Meaning of Catholic. Our next episode will be next Tuesday, I believe, but we're doing kind of a joint episode with the morning show, Our Lady of Victory morning show, but we're doing it in the evening. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed over on The Meaning of Catholic as well.
The
so
Aussies will finally get a morning show then.
yeah, exactly.
They're
so
15 hours ahead.
so we're going to be going over there talking about liturgical living and Advent traditions and things like that. So, typical more female stuff over there on that. I heard it's kind of like a bait and switch over there at The Meaning of Catholic because there's one women's show. There were unfortunately some people who thought that The Meaning of Catholic was man only, and they're pretty disappointed to see my mug and Haley's mug over there. So I don't know.
You guys have 2 episodes and it's all gone to hell.
It's it. Yeah, done for. They're done for.
And then
they sealed their fate when they decided to bring me on and Haley on.
And then 2 clowns decided to bring rap into the equation too.
Yeah.
I can't believe that somebody had the audacity in 2022 to assume that you were 2 women.
That's true. That's super awful.
Did they even check the elbows?
Did they ask?
Did they even check the arms? I don't know. But anyway, so I'll keep you posted. I might have more stuff coming out. I sort of need to take some time because I'm thinking this is kind of towards the end of season 1. And I for me personally, with homeschooling and everything, I need a little bit more of a break to prepare for season 2. But I have some really awesome ideas for next year. I'm really excited to share with you guys a lot of different series on different things. So anyway, I'm not going to say too much about it, but I'm super stoked and I'm excited to continue doing stuff with Haley over on The Meaning of Catholic. So if you're not already subscribed over there, make sure you head on over and subscribe to The Meaning of Catholic, subscribe to Tradmen podcast and Plotlines. And if you really hate your life, go over to Avoiding Babylon and subscribe to their channel.
Wow. That's great.
And forget everything I said about Familiaris Consortio. Anthony will tell you how marriage really works and how
that's true.
Oh, that's so funny. All right, thanks so much for joining us tonight, you guys. I hope that you all have a really great Thanksgiving and a really great Advent. God bless.